My experience with BPD. This is Radical Self-Respect with Jared Mello. I'm going to jump right in today because it's going to be story time. Story time with yours truly. And I've been requested before to talk about borderline personality disorder in men. So I'm going to give you today my experience with it. And I have my suspicions why I even had it to begin with. Now, full disclosure, I've never been diagnosed with BPD, but looking back on the symptoms, I fit all of them, so I'm fairly certain I could have gotten a diagnosis of it. And luckily, I think I've done pretty well with most of those symptoms recently. Now, I'll never say they all go away though either, but that's where I am with it, and I feel like I'm pretty lucky to be where I am now with it. But it certainly can be a painful thing to have, especially for men, because it can go quite terribly. Now, I think one of the origins of it for me was my dad was slightly covert narcissistic, and he had a lot of narcissistic fantasies about his children and baseball. And I was the golden child until I was about 15 years old, and then I quit baseball and I started acting out, socially isolating. I was antisocial. I started being very impulsive with drinking and drugs, and I just kind of went off the gourd. Now, I always had a very rich fantasy life, and I would kind of just retreat into my fantasy world unless I was drinking or drugging, and then I would be out there living. But I had severe anxiety. But the fact that my dad switched up on me from being the golden child to then the black sheep, I think that's one of the major causes of the disorder. And I probably had a lot of genetic predisposition to it, hereditary predisposition. I think people on my dad's side of the family have had this disorder, and I think that's how it comes. And so that was me. And I really got bad into drugs because I was self-medicating my mental illness. And to review, what are the symptoms of BPD anyway? So it can be extremely impulsive behavior. There can be a feeling of emptiness, extreme relationships, black and white relationships, very intense. It can be suicidal idealizations and self-harm, splitting, which means loving someone a lot 1 second and then devaluing and hating them the next. What else is there? There is also fear of abandonment. That's a huge one. And we're going to talk about that and how it presents itself in men in particular in the dating world. And again, I didn't even realize I really had this until a few years ago. And it kind of makes sense because for a lot of my life, like after I came out of my drug haze, like when I was 19, 20 years old, I got on Suboxone for a few years, and that kind of really stabilized me. And I didn't realize how much it was helping me until I got off. And I was able to have a relationship in there, and then I got off, and I was able to be normal in that relationship. I didn't have this intense fear of abandonment. But then when I got off of it, then I got severe one-itis, or even a little bit before I got off of it. I found a new girl and got severe one-itis. I really wanted a soulmate because a lot of my fantasies as a child involved Disney fantasies. They involved having a woman come into my life and making things all better. And I bet you, if we were to ask people that have BPD, a lot of them have that fantasy type thinking behavior, like escapism as a child, and often it involved relationships. And it's no different for me. So I wanted someone to come in and save my life and make things all better, like the way a Disney movie would be. But as we all know, especially for men, that's poison. It's certainly poison. So once I'd gotten off of Suboxone, I found self-help programs. I found NA. I found AA. And so I dove right into them because I thought I was just an addict at the time. I've learned since that diagnosis is not necessarily correct for me. There was other things going on, but that's what I wholeheartedly believed at the time. And that's what they all told me too. Oh, you're just an addict. And it wasn't necessarily true. But I acted as if it was true, and things got better, but I still had a terrible amount of anxiety. And after I broke up with the one girl I had one-itis for, I was literally a repellent for women because I had such a love addiction, like a needing of supply almost, I guess we'll call it. And I could attract women at first because I can see some people thinking out there, well, you don't seem like a bad looking guy. Why were you struggling so much with the ladies? And it's because looks only get you in the door. Once you get them in the door, then you got to keep them. But then all of my insecure attachments and my fear of abandonment would come up. And it would portray itself in approval-seeking behavior, needy behavior, clingy behavior. And it was weak. And women hate that stuff. And so whenever I found a woman I would start to like, I would 100% of the time push them away, repel them away. Now, BPD men in general, they can be good at the attraction part, but depending on how their fear of abandonment portrays itself determines a lot. The other way to act out on the fear of abandonment is to be very territorial, very overprotective, angry, jealous. And it can seem more powerful to some women. And some women who may struggle with codependency, they may fall for that a little more. It keeps the attraction up more than the weak version of the fear of abandonment, the needy, approval-seeking behavior. In my experience, neediness and approval-seeking, nothing will push away women faster than that, caring too much too soon. And that's true. And so I literally repelled women for about 3 to 4 years of my mid-20s. And then I started to get tatted up. And I started to get tattoos because, I wanted people to see me differently. I wanted to maybe to intimidate, to make people maybe not scared of me, but leery of me, as like kind of a repellent, I guess we'll call it. And I felt I had something over people if I had tattoos. And lo and behold, I certainly started to attract more women as I started to get tatted up. I fit more of a role some women were looking for. Now, again though, I still suffered from severe one-itis. I would still get attached and hooked and have an insecure attachment, and I would still have the fear of abandonment, so I could still attract people, but if I actually liked them, I would repel them. Which reminds me, there were women I was friends with back in the day too that I wasn't really into. And there was multiple women this happened with. But when I wasn't into them, I was able to be more of myself. I was able not to have the fear of abandonment. And lo and behold, multiple times those women began to really like me. Because all of my defects didn't come up. They didn't come up because I didn't have the fear of abandonment, because I didn't like them in that way. I didn't put them in that category in my mind. So those relationships probably would have worked better. But then that brings me to the other side of BPD for me, which was I didn't have the chance to act out on this part very much, but when a woman started to get too close to me, then I would feel smothered. Then I would feel like, oh no, I got to get out of here. And I would get like scared and worried, and I would feel trapped. And so one woman, like we hooked up once, and the next day she started calling, and I was like, oh, stop, like what the hell are you doing? Like, I need you to go away. I can't handle this. And I thought it was too much, it was intense, but I wasn't very good at articulating how I felt. I wasn't very good at telling people my boundaries at that stage in my life, because I still didn't know what was wrong with me. Like all throughout my late teens through 20s, I was searching for spirituality. And then I thought I was bipolar for a while, and I started trying to fight that. And I started trying to find supplements to help anxiety. And I found some, thankfully. I found some. But I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I was always trying to discover what's wrong with me. Why do I have suicidal idealizations? Why do I have severe anxiety? Why am I a love addict? Why am I so impulsive? What's going on? And then it wasn't until a few years ago that I finally discovered it. But I was hunting so much to find out the issues that I became pretty well read on psychological issues. I began to be fascinated with love addiction and the game stuff, because they say a lot of the old pickup artists, the famous ones like Don Juans and Casanovas, they're BPD men. And the difference between me and them was they may have had BPD, but they didn't have as much anxiety, and so they were able to be more confident, and that would be more attractive. But if we have the anxiety-ridden BPD as a man, we're going to repel. And it wasn't until I started taking supplements that that anxiety portion went away. And it got replaced a little more with depression, honestly. But if I had to choose between the two, anxiety and depression, I would choose depression all day. Because anxiety, man, it's horrible, man. I couldn't be a person, I couldn't be a version of myself that I respected. I had such high ideals for who I wanted to be that my anxiety was just like, it would make me, I would perceive it as weak, and I couldn't be assertive. I couldn't have boundaries. Like, when I talk about this anxiety, it was like severe anxiety. Not even be able to speak without slurring my words. I didn't have and unless you know it, unless you've been there, you're going to have a hard time understanding. But that's how it was for me. And so I finally got these supplements, and I got helped. And I started discovering more and more supplements that helped, and the anxiety went away, until finally I got to the routine where I'm at now. But during that time, I also discovered the red pill. And the red pill seemed to really be like an antidote to my love addiction, an antidote to one-itis and needing a soulmate. And so it's helped me in that regard. It's helped me to not become addicted to every woman that comes my way. Now, in its place, though, I probably do have a little more emptiness, because the only time I felt at peace before in my love addiction was when an attractive woman was giving me approval, when an attractive woman was loving me. That's when everything felt all better. That's when I felt whole. I was emotionally regulated by that. But nowadays, I don't give women that power over me anymore. So it's like I'm always kind of just like, I'm chill. I'm chill and flat. And with my supplement routine today, my impulsivity has gone way down. My extreme mood swings has gone way down. My suicidal idealizations has gone way down. My black and white thinking has evened out. Like I said in another video, I can still split a little bit on people, but it's not nearly as severe as it used to be. I am kind of still a loner, though. I don't have as many friends probably as I should, but it's a lot better than it was, because I know this: if I were to stop my supplement routine now and start reducing, all of those symptoms would just come back. All of the severe emotional volatility, the impulsivity, the anxiety, all those terrible things would come back. And so, my routine now, nothing's going to be perfect, because I don't think I feel as much as I used to. But before, when I felt as much, it was painful in another way. And so I think some of my life is not quite as magical as it used to be, but I'm much more even-keeled now, and I'm able to function better in society, but it comes at a price. And I've tried to maybe get off of some of the supplements I take to see if that would make a difference, but I'm quickly reminded by the anxiety that punches me in the face how terrible that is, and how I'd much rather have the problems I have now than the problems that I had then. And so, the men who have asked me to make a video about BPD in men, I think it's good, because for men who have BPD, it's hard, because in dating, we always got to keep the attraction up. If the attraction goes, in my experience, women go 100% of the time. And so for a lot of the men out there listening to this, they may have BPD. A lot of how you will do will be determined by, how does your fear of abandonment look? How does it come off as needy and insecure and weak? Or does it come off the other side, which is overly aggressive and territorial and controlling? They're both negative, mind you, but it can appear to some women that the powerful part of it is more attractive. I'm not saying they're right, but it can appear that way, specifically to some more codependent women. And those are the kind of women also that will they'll feel trapped in the relationship with the BPD male. Because the BPD male, they'll be the type of guys that would say something like, if you leave me, I'm going to commit suicide, kind of guys. And kind of commit emotional blackmail. And they may even be emotionally abusive, maybe even sometimes physically abusive. but they're not good. And so men who are listening to this that have the BPD, it's like, we got to find ways to even out our emotions, because when our emotions are all over the place, that also drives women away too. And so I've had to learn how to do that. I've had to learn how to reel in my fantasy life. And like I said, am I perfect how I am now? Absolutely not. Absolutely not perfect. And I feel like I'm peace. It's peace, but I can feel a little empty sometimes still too. It's peace, but a little empty. And sometimes I can miss like the magical feelings of being all over the place emotionally, and like being lost in fantasy land. Sometimes that can seem attractive. Nowadays, if I were to drink, sometimes that magic comes back a little bit when I drink. For a while there, in my late 20s and early 30s, it was Phenibut that would really be like my fantasy trigger. And I would do Phenibut, and I would go into Never Never Land. And I would just, like, my anxiety would melt away. I'd be completely free of insecurities, and I'd be able to chat up women better. And so, of course, as a love addict type person, I'm going to love a drug like that. And so I did for a while. But it came at a price. It came at a price of rebound anxiety and depression. And sometimes I'd be shameful and have guilt over some of the things I would do while I was on it. So eventually I lost the desire to do that. But sometimes I still have a desire to drink. I still have a desire to escape once in a while and go off into my own world and just like feel at peace, where I can drink, even by myself sometimes, and just like listen to music, watch a show like The Wire or The Sopranos, and just be gone. Like turn off the world, because eventually the world can seem overwhelming sometimes, where like I can be good for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden after a while, it's like I'm Animal from the Muppets, and I'm playing the slow song, but then also I need to go wild. Poof! And then once I go wild, I feel guilt and shame, and then I get motivated to be good again. And I get to enjoy the process of being good again and coming back to good health and back to spirituality. And then the cycle repeats, where I get bored of spirituality, I get bored of being good, and I want to act out again. And the cycle just goes round and round. Rasputin, from the 1910s, he was friends with the Tsar and Tsarina of Russia. And that was his philosophy too. Like they called him the mad monk. And what he would say is, we have to sin. We sin to repent. And so he was big into drinking, big into womanizing. And as you can see, I've kind of idolized people like that, because I feel like they're like me. They're big into drinking, big into womanizing, just like Oscar Schindler here on my arm. That's one of the reasons why I really liked him, is because, yeah, he was a big drinker, yeah, he was a womanizer, but he put all of that to the side to, save people's lives. And so it's like he had a level of madness, but he still was able to work with that madness, and he was still able to try to do some good things. And I really relate to that. I really identify with that. And so, there's really only one girl in the world that kind of knows that stuff about me. And she would know, like, yeah, you like Oscar because, he was the womanizer, he was the drinker, but he also did good things. And she's right. I was like that. And so that's where I am with it now. I go through like I'm peaceful, I'm good the majority of the time, but every so often, as Billy Joel would say, still your finger's going to pick its nose. And I act out, and then I go through the cycle of guilt, shame, and I want to be good again for a while until the cycle repeats. And so I want to be careful not to act like I know it all on this channel. I want to be careful to act like I'm holier than thou. I know it all. I'm cured. I've solved anxiety and depression. No, I'm not cured. No, yes, I still struggle with things. Yes, I can still feel empty on days. Yes, I'm guilty of binge drinking sometimes. Yes, I'm guilty of having fantasies. The difference is my fantasies are different now. They're not like one-itis soulmate fantasies. They're more like fantasies of me like becoming wealthy, having a great YouTube channel, and being able to travel the world, maybe having affairs as I go. Like that's part of my fantasies now. And I think if you get people to tell you like their ideal lives and their fantasies, they'll tell on themselves. They'll tell on themselves what they're really after. And that's what I'm after. I admit it. And so BPD is something that And I think other women might say, well, you kind of spoken disparagingly about women with BPD when you've dated them. And it's like, well, yes and no. I think it's important to tell people what they're dealing with because everything I've said in these videos is the truth. It's the absolute truth. And funnily enough, as I've gotten better with my BPD traits, now people say, oh, you're more narcissistic now. You're narcissistic now instead. And I don't know if I believe that. Maybe they're right. But it's almost like a graduating. Like you can graduate from BPD to narcissism. Maybe. I think there's a healthy level of narcissism out there. But there's also a line. I try to be self-aware, though. I try to catch myself and take a step back before I respond and do stupid things. So, I can still act out, like I said. I can still sext sometimes with people. I'm not necessarily a fan of that, but I've done it. So, I'm certainly not perfect out there. And yeah, the women that we date that are like this, it can be painful. And we gotta be in a good place, whether you're a male with BPD or a woman with BPD, before we date anyone. If we're not in a good place, then it's like, we're gonna hurt people. The bottom line. And that's why I share it. But I have all the understanding in the world for women that have BPD too, because I get it. And that's why I've probably dated them in the past, because I relate to them. I identify with their struggle. And it's a powerful feeling, because when you have BPD, not many people get it. Not many people understand. But the people who do, it's a very powerful connection. But it's not always a connection for a good reason. It's a connection because your traumas are similar. It's a connection because you have similar traits. And it's not always going to be healthy. But that feeling it's a safe feeling. Even though it's not safe. It's not safe at all, but you connect. I connect with those types of people sometimes. And I'm trying to grow into a place where I connect with people that are not cluster B. I can connect with someone who's just normal. I connect with someone who is well adjusted. And I've gotten there a little bit, but I still have a ways to go because, and this is why I know this, because if I were to go back to some of the girls I've had in the past, I just know I could probably feel like we could get along. And they'd probably get along for a minute, and then I'd remember why I left. And I would remember, oh yeah, this is why I'm not there anymore. And so, but the connection would still be there. I still maybe wouldn't want to be a part of it, but the connection would still be there. And that's hard. That's the hard part about having BPD, is that the connections are hard to come by. The connections are hard to come by. And as a man, we have a lot of things we got to worry about when we have BPD as a man. We got to watch our fear of abandonment. We have to watch our anxiety. We have to watch our neediness. We have to watch our emotions. We can't let our emotions get out of control. We can't be too impulsive. There's a lot of stuff to watch out for. There's a lot of BPD traits in men that aren't necessarily attractive to women. I've seen a lot of BPD men, they attract women at first, but their problem is they have a hard time keeping them, usually because of how the fear of abandonment portrays itself. But it's tough. It's not an easy thing. So, BPD men, they're probably going to have a really understanding woman one day, if they're going to be in a relationship. And all the while, it's still always our responsibility to try to get better. It's our responsibility to be trying to improve, do the things the best we can, to not be our own worst enemy, to not self-sabotage, because that's another big one people do. They self-sabotage. Me included sometimes. I can still self-sabotage. Be wary of the fear of success, which is really just the fear of responsibility. And so it's a rough road to travel. So if you're a man that has BPD out there, feel free to reach out to me. Reach out to me because I understand. I understand all that stuff, and I might be able to work with you to help you get better, to help you work on your symptoms and help them to be manageable. I think there's supplements that absolutely could help. And if prescription drugs help you, I don't care. Whatever works for people is what I am all for. And so, again, though, in regards to the women with BPD, I get it. I don't want to sound like I'm bashing BPD people on this channel. It's just when I'm helping men, I'm trying to let them know what they got to watch out for. Because, and here's the thing with everyone, and with anyone who has BPD, if they're not working on it, it's dangerous. If they're not working on it, it hurts people. And that's something that we all have to watch out for that, because we shouldn't be hurting people. And even if we have the best of intentions, if we're not working on our disorders, that's a problem. And I've heard people say that have BPD, well, I can't control my emotions. It's not my fault I have a disorder. But it's like, well, you got to find a way. You got to find a way to manage them. You got to find a way that works for you. Because if you can't, then you probably shouldn't be in a relationship if you can't manage it. So, I think that's my video for today. Kind of a deep dive. A little bit of a story time too. But let me know what you think about this video. Did you like it, not like it? Can you relate to my experience? Please let me know in the comments. And if you've gotten this far, thank you very much for watching.